In today's Community Focus, as part of our continuing back-to-school coverage on 12 Plus, I sat down with best-selling author and Brown University Professor Emily Oster to talk about some common back-to-school questions like homework and the right time to get your kid a cell phone. Here's a part of that conversation. Is homework effective in helping kids learn, and how much is enough, or too much or too little?
It's such a hard question. We see much more homework now than we once did. There are sort of like eras of homework over time, but we are in a high homework moment. There is some evidence that some kinds of homework that like reinforces in-school skills, that helps kids develop executive function. The mere fact of like you've brought home a piece of paper and done something to it and brought it back, like that's a skill. And if homework is about developing that skill, there's potentially quite a lot of value because it's not very much time, but it is this skill of like multi-step direction. When we get into my kindergartners sitting down for an hour of worksheets during the day, that's much more than the pedagogical benefits would suggest. So it's really thinking about like what's the function of homework? Is it reinforcement? Is it helping them deliver these multi-step directions? And then going from there.
Why do you think it is that we have more homework now than we did before?
Some of it is just feelings of competitiveness with other countries, honestly. That seems to drive a lot of the...
We need more homework?
That seems to drive a lot of these variations over the large-scale time.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to talk about childhood independence. When can kids start to do things on their own? What is age appropriate? And is there too much independence that we can give kids? Is there too much helicopter parenting we can do?
You can do too much of anything. What I would say is right now, our kids have far less independence than they did, 2 decades ago, especially in terms of physical independence. People tend to be much more cautious about, walking to the store by yourself, walking to school by yourself. And what I would tell parents is there's different amounts are going to be appropriate for different kids, but sometimes people will scaffold, like be very cautious until their kid is quite old. And if your kid is 14 and they haven't, walked down the street to their friend's house by themselves, then that's going to be a hard thing to introduce then. And there is an opportunity to introduce small amounts of independence as they age. Get yourself downstairs in the morning. That's something your 4-year-old can do. Walk yourself to school. That's something your 7-year-old can do, depending on how far it is. And just thinking about adding little pieces of that is good for them, but it's also good for parents, because the first time your kid walks to school alone, you're going to be afraid. And the third time, you're going to just think, okay, this is fine. So
there's so much, like I mentioned earlier, that comes at parents about, screen time is bad and social media is really damaging to kids. What is true here? And is all media created equal, or is there stuff that our kids can be positively engaging with through technology?
So let's separate here the kind of passive media consumption that would be more common in little kids and the kind of active social media stuff that's more of an issue for older kids.
Great.
So for little kids, I don't think this is as complicated as people are making it. A lot of the data that says, even showing your kids any screens will ruin them forever, that's just correlation. It's not causal. The way that parents should think about this is, where do screens fit in my life? My kid's watching 8 hours of screens a day. They're not doing other things they should do. If we're thinking, 45 minutes of screens while I finish making dinner so we can all sit down and be relaxed, like that's a good use of screens. So planning where screens fit in your day is kind of one piece, and not thinking of them as good or bad. Then we get to older kids, and we have a much more complicated question of things like phones. And the issue with phones is, number one, they're there all the time.
Yes.
And so setting boundaries on screens is tricky. And two, they contain social media, which for some kids can be amazing. So for some kids can be an opportunity to connect with people who are like them, to sort of get through complicated social dynamics with the people they see in person. And for other kids, and probably on average, can be kind of not great for mental health. And so we're sort of balancing those two things. And as a parent, it's hard to figure out, both who is my kid and how are they going to react to this, and then, when is the right time. And there's not like one answer. I wish I could be like, the right age for your kid to have a phone is 14, but like that's not going to be true.
There is no right answer.
There is no right answer to this question.
I mean, is there any sense from data, from research that you've looked at, if, a 6-year-old gets a cell phone versus if a 15-year-old gets a cell phone?
So that question is almost impossible to answer in data, because think about what kind of 6-year-olds are getting cell phones. There are 6-year-olds who get cell phones. That's not the same family. family as a 15-year-old that gets a cell phone. That's not comparable. And so we do see, you know, when kids are getting access to phones at 5 or 6 or 8, their test score outcomes and other things tend to be worse, but that's almost certainly to do with many other aspects and not the phone itself.
Yeah. And you can watch my entire interview with Emily Oster tonight at 9 on 12+. We'll touch on more data-driven parent advice, from bullying to managing all those extracurriculars. Be sure to download the 12+ app for all of our original content.